Today I'll review the 7900 XTX and discuss why I bought it, the performance, the pros and cons, any issues I've had with it, as well as the driver support, and then basically my final thoughts and conclusion. Let me just say that I did hours and hours of research before purchasing the XTX because I'm a cheap and I wanted to make sure I got the best for my money when spending $1,000+ on a GPU. With that out of the way, let's talk about why I bought it. I decided to pull the trigger on the 7900 XTX because I was able to order it for $1,079 and it's usually $1,199. Sometimes you can find it for $1,049 on Newegg, but I have to admit that's pretty rare. Most of the time it is $1,079 whenever it is on sale, but like I said, right now it is $1,199 and I've rarely seen it go any lower. With that being said, my first experience with AMD was when I bought a 5700 XT back in 2019, and this was an upgrade from my GTX 970. And I actually ended up returning the 5700 XT and buying a 2060 Super instead because of stability and driver issues. So with that in mind, I did tell myself that if anything went wrong with AMD this time, I would just return it and buy a 4080. I did not want to have to deal with any annoying issues with an expensive GPU. Needless to say, I ended up ordering a 4080 not even a month after having the 7900 XTX. Stay tuned and I'll discuss why I still think the 7900 XTX is a kick-ass card and why you should definitely still consider purchasing one if you're in the market for a high-end GPU. By the way, before purchasing the XTX, I did spend a lot of time researching the 4070 Ti, the 4080, the 3080, and the 3090 Ti as alternatives, but I ended up going for the XTX originally because of the superior performance in games like Modern Warfare 2 and the better price to performance value. In other words, I didn't want to spend any more than I had to get great gaming performance. Speaking about performance, the 7900 XTX performs very well in rasterization, especially in games like Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2, where it beats the 4080 and even matches the 4090. I won't bore you to death with benchmarks and specs. There's plenty of videos that go super into depth into those topics, but from my experience, this card is a beast at 1440p high refresh rate gaming with ultra settings. That's a mouthful, but basically you can definitely say it's overkill for 1440p gaming, especially since it's aimed at 4K. But what if you want to use the XTX for things other than normal gaming? What if you want a graphics card and you want to use it for things like recording, streaming, editing, playing VR? Well, I did all of that, and with the right settings, this thing really does perform well, except when it doesn't. And this leads me to the reason why I decided to replace my XTX for the 4080. I do have a couple of issues with the XTX. First, I was aware that the VR support and performance had issues, but I decided to give it a shot anyway. I have a Samsung Odyssey Plus Windows Mixed Reality headset, and I tested Pavlov VR, Blade and Sorcery, and Onward VR. And I have to say, the performance is barely noticeably better than my 2060 Super that I replaced it with. So the reports of crappy VR support were true, but at least AMD knows about it, right? Well, the thing is, no one knows how long it's going to take to improve VR support or if it's even possible to fix and optimize it. And on top of the issues that I had with VR, I also had issues streaming. I had to restart my stream 3 times in one day because of Streamlabs OBS crashes, and I gave up after the 3rd crash. On top of Streamlabs OBS crashing, I also had Modern Warfare 2 and Star Wars Battlefront 2 crash, and it seemed like they crashed just as much as my old GPU. Basically, I really just got ticked off that I spent more than $1,000 on a GPU on top of having to upgrade my power supply. And so I immediately looked on Best Buy right after, and I found an open box 4080 in excellent condition, so I bought it and I might return the XTX. Like I previously mentioned, I expected issues based on my previous experience with owning an AMD GPU, and I was definitely aware that I would either have to deal with the issues until they got fixed or look for alternatives. All of the gameplay in this video is recorded by me using the AMD H265 encoder. I use Premiere Pro and Photoshop to edit, and this GPU handles both like an absolute dream. Based on my research, NVIDIA's cards are better at productivity, and if you're a professional or a very dedicated creator, you might want to stick with NVIDIA because they're overall just better. They have more support, and they have CUDA. But now that I've discussed the performance of the 7900 XTX, let's go over the pros and cons of this card. I'll start with the pros. So the price. It's cheaper than a 4080, at least if you're talking brand new, and it performs just as good or better than the 4080 in most games without heavy ray tracing. It also has 24 gigabytes of VRAM, and it's better than the 6000 series at ray tracing. Basically, I'm saying like it performs better at ray tracing than the older AMD GPUs. I'm considering that a pro because at least they've made progress, but I do have to admit that they're obviously still significantly worse at ray tracing than the competition. But let's go for the cons now. So it lacks VR support and it performs way worse than it should. If you play a lot of VR, I would personally stay away from it. I've had issues with artifacts and basically just weird looking textures. And on top of that, it's very inefficient in terms of power draw, meaning it gets very hot because it sucks up a lot of energy. And this is even at idle, so not good. It performs worse than the competition at productivity apps, like I mentioned before. NVIDIA's always kind of had the edge on stuff like editing and animation and 3D work. So if you do a lot of that, then I would definitely go for the NVIDIA side of things instead of the AMD GPUs. But with that being said, most of the issues that this GPU has are known issues by AMD and are being fixed. It's also worth mentioning that AMD has been releasing drivers pretty frequently over the past 2 months, so maybe they'll fix most of the issues soon. But driver issues aside, I think that the 7900 XTX is still a beast of a high-end GPU for gaming, streaming, recording, and editing. It offers good price to performance, especially with these crazy GPU prices. But if you really care about ray tracing and you spend a lot of time in VR, or you use productivity apps like Blender, then I would consider the 4080, especially if you can get it for cheaper than the 7900 XTX like I did, but that's probably pretty rare. And that's where I'll end this video. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video and consider subscribing. If you want to see more content like this and would like me to review the 4080 once it arrives, please let me know in the comments. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.